was that, and Miss Umagwanesa is here today to speak to us. But before she does, I just wanted to give a couple of opening remarks. April is Holocaust and Genocide Awareness Month, and this is our 9th annual celebration of that commemoration of events dealing with genocide. And previously, we've had Holocaust survivors here to speak. And one of the things that many of you know who take my class is that the youngest are in their mid-80s, and they're reaching a point when they're not able to give their testimony because of a number of conditions that they face, medical conditions in this case. And what's also very striking about that is when you hear stories from Holocaust survivors, or when you hear Provy's story today, one of the things that you're going to see is there's a lot of distinct parallels between those two experiences when we talk genocide. To start today, I do want to again thank Tim Gritton for helping us to bring out the artwork that's in the front there. I want to thank again Vincent and the facilities folks for doing that. Joseph Pickering, who helped us get this venue, and all the IT folks up there, Kevin and Moises, thank you for what you're doing for us. And Dr. Bill Bush and Mimi Paulino, who helped sponsor this event in the College of Arts and Sciences. One thing you may have seen in the news is today is the 19th of April. It's the 79th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And that was the largest uprising against the Nazis by a Jewish group in the Warsaw Ghetto that lasted about 4 weeks before it's suppressed. And so today we kind of commemorate that. On the 27th of April, we will be also commemorating Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance. But today I am absolutely pleased to have a speaker here who's going to be talking about her experience as a young girl. And 7 April 1994 was the start of the genocide in Rwanda. And it lasted for the so-called 100 days to 15 July. And up to 800,000 people were killed during that genocide in Rwanda. Largely Tutsi, some moderate Hutus, and a small portion of the Twa or Bantwa population of Rwanda. When we look at these commemorations, one thing that strikes me, and I have Provy's book here, which is going to be available to anyone who is interested after the talk. But in her book, she talks about genocide just doesn't happen; it's prepared, and it's prepared by propaganda. It's prepared by press talk. It's prepared by Radio Milcolin, which has a kind of hate speech going on, in which Tutsis are described as cockroaches. For those who have taken the Holocaust class, we look at the way in which Nazis use terms like plague and bacillus to dehumanize their Jewish victims. We see those same types of steps when we look at cases of other genocide. What also strikes me in reading Provy's book is when she talks about her family, and we've had Holocaust survivors here that talk about seeing their family for the last time, that talk about seeing that their family's possessions, including clothing, are being worn by other people in their community after the killing. And she also talks about, though, it's not just about the perpetrators, that there are a few brave people that rescue people and provide a way for those to survive. Unfortunately, too few. In the Holocaust, we talk about 1.5 million children who perish. When we talk about Rwanda, Provy's story talks about the many children who lose their lives as a result of genocide. But she also talks about, like our Holocaust survivors have done in the past, this idea of resilience, and the resilience that she shows in giving us her testimony. And today, Providence Umugwanesa, who is here as our speaker, is an advocate not only for telling the story about what happened to her and her family, but for tens of thousands of young girls and women. She's worked with those women, especially those who were victims of sexual violence during this period, who were HIV/AIDS infected as a result. She has been an advocate in sharing their story and supporting them. As I mentioned, she is also a commissioner as of September of last year. She joined the Texas Holocaust, Genocide, and Anti-Semitism Advisory Commission. She most recently, on the 7th April anniversary, actually was selected by the United Nations to tape her testimony and to talk about her experience. She is an author. As I mentioned, we have her book. And not last but not least, she's a spouse and a mother of 3 beautiful children. And I am so delighted to have you here today. Thank you, Provi, for coming today. And the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Providence Umugwaneza. I am a survivor of the 1994 genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. I lead a non-for-profit organization called Kabehoneza Initiative that educates for women and ladies, all the ladies who were abused sexually by their militia. I recently completed a book titled Next Couple Hours. Thank you, Ed, for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of you all and tell you all about my experience of the genocide of 1994 in my country. I was 11 years old in 1994 when I was traveling to my aunt during Easter break to help her with a new baby born son. And by the time I was getting ready to go back home, I told my aunt I was, everything I was packed up and I was ready to go back home. And she told me that I cannot be able to go because in the news it was saying that the airplane that was carrying the then president was shut down and only the worst situation was going to follow. I stayed there. Waited to see how things were going to go. Yes, I was saying that I stayed with her, and by the time we were waiting to see how the situation was going to get better, I saw the smokes and heard the houses pounding on the other side of the neighborhood we were living in. I saw so many people running with fear coming towards where we were, and they were saying, people, they are being killed where we are coming from. I heard people who were going to come to stay with us saying that they don't want us to go back where we're living because one of my uncle, who was my father's older brother, was already cut in machetes. It was about 3 p.m. that same day, and we decided to keep hiding because everybody was trying to see how they can go and find somewhere to hide. We tried to go to hide in people's houses. By the time we were taking our trips to find somewhere we can go and hide, I saw the people that I knew who were Tutsi. they were laying on the ground. Those were the teachers. Some were the nurses, and other ones were other people who were at that time were kind of having a situation, and they were those ones who were giving good help in the community. So we kept finding somewhere to hide, and I kept looking around and see if one of my siblings was going to be one of them. I didn't find any, but I found my uncle's, who was younger than my father, so his son was one of the crowds that was running with fear. I tried to shout to them, calling him to come and say hi to me because I have been staying away from my home. But he didn't hear. Everybody was trying to run to find somewhere to go because the situation on the neighborhood where we used to live was really, really getting so worse and dangerous. I heard as we were everybody was running as we were trying to hide. We found people who were carrying machetes, sharp machetes, and knives, singing and having the radio on their ear, singing the chants of like, let's kill them, let's finish them. Those are the songs I heard when I was young, and I didn't hear what that was going to be, what that meant. When I was hearing those songs they were singing, and some of them were carrying sometimes the Bible, saying, oh, the Bible even tells us that we have to kill you. I remembered how when I was young, I was around six or 7, and the kids in our class, they would say, we will kill everybody when the day comes. I didn't understand why they wanted to kill us, because even in my home, my father and my mother, they didn't tell me that we were Tutsi, and Tutsi was one of the tribe that was going to be killed. So there were Tutsis and Hutus in my country, and the killing started way before in 1959. 1963, 1974, the killings kept coming back and forth, but the ones that took place before were not as huge and aggressive as 1994. So as today, I can hear people who are older than me, they say that they have been trying to do the genocide. They have been preparing to do the genocide to exterminate the Tutsi, but it wasn't a success until 1994. Everything happened. So in my family, we were 8 children and 2 parents. I was the 5th, and as I told you, I was visiting my aunt during Easter break, and I remember how when I went to visit, I left to visit, I didn't say goodbye to them. We stayed home when my older siblings were at school, and during the time they were gone, I was missing them all the time. I remember that I spent all my time pinning letters to them. I would write everything that was taking place at home and put in the letter and give it to my father. By the time they came home, I felt shy. I didn't want to see them in the eyes. I kept hiding. So the time I was staying with my aunt, I was in so much rush to go back to see them. And I kept telling her, I want to go home, I want to go home. And she was like, you have to wait, you have to wait. You know, the situation is not as good as you think. She knew what she was talking about, but I didn't figure out what was going to happen. I kept having in my mind this idea, I wish I could have said goodbye to them. So as we stayed with the others, everybody, you know, because our family, where we were living, everybody knew our family, and we knew at some point that when the killings started, they were going to finish my family. I knew that in my mind. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't know how. because I knew the kids were saying, you are Tutsi, you are the traitors, and there was a war started by RPF to try to save the Tutsis who were in the country because there has been killings all the time. And at our school, like when we were late, I can speak by myself, let's say that the school would start at 7:30 and I get there at 7:35. The teachers and the director of the school, they will start to beat us just because we were Tutsi. It's now that I understand everything I didn't understand then. So we kept hiding and hiding. There was my sister who was with my parents. She was hiding, and where they were, sorry. Sorry, I was saying that my family was trying to hide on their end, and I was staying with my aunt, trying to see if we are going to escape the killing going on. So we tried to hide and we tried to stay in the bushes. My aunt had a newborn baby. The baby didn't cry at that time, but we kept trying and trying. And by the time I was crossing by the rivers, I would see the bodies floating on top of the rivers. I saw people I knew. I would pass by their houses when I was going to see my aunt, and they were laying down, killed. I saw babies trying to nurse trying to nurse when their mothers were already killed, but I kept going. So we kept hiding. There was so much rain, you know how in April it's always raining. And the RPF in Hotanyi, that is forces that is on power now, was trying to save Tutsis who were still alive. I remember one day, ahead of the troop that was killing in the area, they came to find Tutsi who were still alive, and they came. They told us to drink and eat the food we like before they go to sink us in the river. So we were not afraid of dying. I don't even remember how I was feeling because I had in mind that everybody that I loved was killed, and there was no way I was going to survive, or it didn't matter for me to survive and to be by myself. So by the grace of God, we kept hiding, and the RPF took over the country, and we survived. By the time we survived, my aunt stayed with my grandmother, and my younger brother, my father's young brother, who was living in Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda, came to find us. I was with my older sister, and that's where I came to know that everybody else, my 5 siblings, my 2 parents, and my 2 uncles with their 18 children, were completely wiped out. I didn't know where the hope was going to come from, but at some point I thought we were going to live because there was no other way we were going to be. I didn't know we were going to go to school. I knew I used to have good grades to impress my father because he all the time had trust in me, and now I don't know what I have to do. But I have this feeling that I will have to do everything I've been doing to make him proud. So we didn't have time to mourn. We kept on living. We went to school. I felt confused in my mind. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't go to school in Kigali. I went to school in my village, and the education wasn't as high as in the capital city. So it was at the same time hard to catch up with the school, as well as to get used to this life living with my uncle's family. I thank God that our uncle's family took a good care of us. We were it was 10 of us. Me and my sister and his wife had 2 nephews and their 5 children. They took us to school. They provided everything we needed. And I remember having in my mind, I remembered my younger sibling, my sister, who was the sixth of my family. I remembered how she was weak, and I said, God, I would like her to be alive today. If there was a miracle and she can be alive, I would treat her right. I prayed that in my heart. I didn't know what was going to follow. And we kept hearing, the fate of our family. I heard how my mother and father, especially my mother, when they started to hide, we had a baby. He was 2. He was the last born. So people who saw my mother and our last born, they said he was hungry, crying. But my mother, because she didn't have something to eat, they were starving at that time. She didn't know how to feed him, and he kept crying. And as the babies were crying, it was easier for the killers to find where they were hiding. I learned also that my sister, who was older than the last born, was sick, so she was weak. She couldn't escape quickly, and that's how she got killed. I kept thinking about those memories, and in the night, they will come back in my dreams, and I saw my mom and was laughing, and I told her, that I'm happy we are together. I used to think that they were killed. She didn't say anything. After the genocide, so many orphans were out there. Some of them were living in the orphanages, others were living with their family. But I can't be thankful enough, because I am one of the orphans who didn't struggle with getting married early because of a bad life of being orphan. So as I told you, I was praying for my younger sister, and all of a sudden we were going to a communion party. There was a non-community in our neighborhood, and we went to celebrate the communion for one of the kids who were staying in the nuns' community. And then I saw someone who was carrying a picture, and she said, "Do you know this little girl?" And I said, "Let me look closer." And I found out this young girl may be my sister, that I didn't know she was still alive. So she told me that they went to the place where my grandmother was living, and my grandmother said, this may be my grandkid, but I'm not very sure that this is her, because I know my grandkids and my kids were all killed. They have been killed. So I said, this may be my sister. And they said she's in Italy, that she has been transported in Italy with other kids, Hutu, who were hurt by mistake. So by the time the genocide started, the killings didn't really, like, they targeted people, but some of them were mistakenly hurt. So by the time they found out, they rushed them to the healthcare centers to take care of them. So my father's friend saw my sister, and this is my sister's story before I jumped to the house. She went to Italy. She was with my family, and they were trying to hide. They were staying at the, it's like here, it's like you can seek refuge to the, let's say, to the county office, or, so it's an administration office. And then they were being cut with machetes, Tutsis, and they were shouting, to kill you with a bullet, you have to pay. They wanted you to be tortured. So if you want to be killed with a bullet, you have to pay. And then she got shot on the right shoulder. My family, everybody of my family was still alive at that moment. And she lost consciousness, and she remembers that by the time she got shot and fell down, my father came close to her and told her in the ear that they are not sure that she is alive, but if she can hear them, they are trying to survive, and if they all survive, they will see each other again. So she didn't get to see them again, and she kept trying to escape this place because it was a very dangerous place. And then they put her in this airplane that was transporting these kids who were hurt, shot by mistake, because they were mixing them with Tutsis who were targeted. And she received they did a surgery on the right hand, and a graft, they took it on the ribs. And then she spent 1 year over there. And when we were talking to this nun who was asking us if we know her, that's when they decided to get in touch with her, and they called her. We talked over the phone. She was happy we are alive, but she was at some point disappointed because she didn't know we were alive, but she was looking for those ones who were with her by the time they got killed. They did the arrangements, and they flew her over to Rwanda. We met her, so 3 of us now are still alive. And we didn't get a chance to know where our parents were buried, and nobody was courageous in their killers to tell us whether they threw them somewhere or they threw them in the rivers. We know some were thrown in the rivers, and I heard my older brother was thrown in the toilet pit, but because we hear so many stories, it's hard for survivors to know where our loved ones are. You may wonder why it's very important today to speak about this history. It's been 28 years, and we are still hurting, but I trust that this horrific moment that we went through has to be known by the world, because we don't want anybody else in the world to experience what we went through. We don't want parents to choose either to be killed ahead of their children, or the children to watch their parents be tortured in front of them. We want the world filled with peace and tolerance, and survivors have to be the first responders to this matter. I stand here today to encourage everybody to fight for peace, community, and tolerance, to make a good impact in the community, in the society. For the parents to raise good kids, to train them with small good characters such as empathy, care, and love that will lead them to be future generation who will be leading by example. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Profi is going to be right back. She's just taking a second. As you can tell, those are very powerful words, and the human effects that we touch in these kinds of situations. I think when I had Holocaust speakers, it's the exact same effect. You feel the loss, and you feel the hope, and you also see the courage. So what Provi is going to do now, she has some pictures that she wanted to talk about, but if you have questions, I just ask if you would, in groups of no larger than 2, if you would just come to the microphones, and after she's done speaking about the photos she wanted to share with the group, then you can ask her some direct questions.
Yeah, I probably didn't mention this, but right after finishing my college studies, I thought as a survivor that I have to go to the Genocide Memorial, where the facts about the genocide were displayed. Like, you can see the bodies, you can see the pictures, clothes, shoes, and everybody that shows that the genocide was real. So these are the pictures of the victims the Memorial Center was able to collect. You can see children. These are the children's pictures. And the memorial, they would show what they liked to eat and what the games they like to play, their favorite thing of every day. So these pictures show the victims who were children. In the genocide, the babies and the children were not forgiven. Instead, they were tricked to be killed easily. Like, they would trick them and give them like candies or cakes, pour them together and maybe burn them or throw them in the pit alive. So this is these are some of the pictures we were able to save from the children who were killed in the genocide. Another thing that was really hard for the genocide survivors to find is the pictures, because the killers, as they wanted for the Tutsi to disappear and the cleansing of the ethnic, they burned the pictures too. They burned everything. So there are survivors who don't have pictures of their loved ones. They only cling on the memories. Do we have another one? Oh, this one. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Can you advance it up in the booth, please? It looks like it's frozen down here. Ah, there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is the map of Rwanda. Yes, this is in pink. This is the map of Rwanda. And the killing took place in all of, now they call them don't remember know them in Rwanda, but they changed the name. They used to be called prefecture, and right now they kind of changed the names, and everybody who was in the same area that you see here was killed. There are some areas that had strong killings, like Butare and Kibuye, Gisenyi, Ruhengeri, and Gitarama. They really had a big number of victims because they killed them with every traditional weapons they had in order to exterminate the Tutsis very quickly.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, as you can see the map with a machete, it's because to kill the Tutsi, machete was a main weapon to torture Tutsis. And I have to mention that the funding of these machetes was done by a wealthy person back then. His name was Kabuga Feliciani, and he's in trial right now.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, this is the wall of names. As you can see, they are very, very small, but it's too many of them. This is the Memorial Center site, and these are the names of the victims who are in the mass graves at the Memorial Center.
Next slide, please. Can you back up one, please?
That's fine. That's fine. So this picture you can. Okay. Yeah, you can see here. This is a picture of the victims. Okay. Okay. This is the picture inside the museum, showing the children when they were living a happy life before the genocide. Some of them, I'm sure many of them didn't know the genocide was going to take place, and they were going to be tortured without even knowing the reason they were being tortured. For the many reasons they were Tutsi, and as me, they ignored they were Tutsi. And this is the main reason, as I am a survivor who was a child and who is lucky to be able to be a voice, I have to advocate for them and for the genocide not to be forgotten and the victims to be respected. The victims to be respected because they should be with us today. Okay, this is the picture. This is one of the pictures we were able to find for the family. I think these are siblings who were trying to have a good moment at the same before the genocide. So this shows that the victims were persons like others, and they had joy in the life they were. Okay, this is the link information, the important links for people who would like to go and do more research. We can recommend I Am Not Living by Carl Wilkins. He's an American who decided to stay in the country while the genocide was taking place. His book is called World Outside My Shoes, and it's very, very important and informative about the genocide. Carl himself can play the phone calls he recorded when he was in the U.S. Embassy in Rwanda while the genocide was taking place. He decided to send his family back in America and stay in Rwanda with his friends who were going to be killed. Kyle Wickens is still alive and he lives in Seattle, Washington. Next couple hours is my book, where I talk about my life before the genocide, during the genocide, and after the genocide, and the reason why I decided to talk about my experience and the importance of raising awareness about the genocide and the Holocaust. Number 3 is Inside the Hotel in Rwanda by Edward Kayihura. This is a book that has an important history of what took place in Rwanda, but especially the victims and the survivors who speak of what took place in Hotel Milcolin, where Tutsi seek refuge, and some of them, they escaped and others were killed because they had to pay, and some of the victims, they didn't have enough money to pay. So I recommend this book to understand more of what happened in Hotel Rwanda in 1994. For advancing the international human rights law, responsibility and development, by Noam Shimo. He's a professor, and he is, I think, Southern California, and he was able to visit Rwanda several times, be able to talk with survivors and do researches about the genocide, visiting memorials. So this is a very good book that I can recommend. And then number 5, The Antelope Strategy, Living in Rwanda After the Genocide by Linda. It's another good story by an American who was able to visit Rwanda and experience the genocide on her, and experience this visit by herself and be able to witness, like the saying goes, when you hear the witness, you become a witness. So this is another book that I recommend when you want to do more research about the genocide. And then Shake Hands with the Devil by Romeo Dallaire. Romeo Dallaire was in Rwanda too, and he was a commander from United Nations, and he's one who was all the time trying to let the UN know that the genocide was being prepared and that the Tutsi were going to be killed, but nobody wanted to pay attention of what was going to happen. So Romeo Dallaire speaks about everything that he experienced before the genocide, during the genocide, and how he got hit with this remorse of not being able to save any of the victims, including babies, women, and sick people, as well as disabled people who were being tortured and killed with machetes. There is Ghost of Rwanda, that is a documentary movie that is really, really a good one to watch when you want to know what happened in 1994 in Rwanda. It has strong graphics. Just in case you watch it, just be aware of the graphics within the documentary movie. All right, so this is my contacts for any questions or comments for those who would like to know more about the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. Thank you all for sparing your time to be with us today.
So if there are any questions, if you would just come down to the microphone and use the microphone, please. Please be brave. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and talking with us. I really appreciated the talk. I had seen a documentary that covered the story of one woman whose family was murdered by her neighbor. And now she lived next to that same woman who her family had been killed by, or at least by her husband. One thing that I was interested in is, what was the process of reconciliation like in Rwanda? How did the culture come back together, and how did people forgive others? What was that process like?
Thank you so much for your question. I think, yeah, the reconciliation is in process. You know, this genocide took a long time to be put in place. Like I said, from 1959, people were being killed, people were being chased from their own homes. So survivors are still dealing with so many, they are dealing with trauma and loss, and they are dealing with poverty. But mainly I can say that reconciliation is in the process because they can live next to each other, like you said, and nobody is going to hurt, no Tutsi is going to hurt Hutus because they killed their family, maybe children or husbands. So the fact that there is no revenge and they are living next to each other. Myself lived there 8 years ago, and I can say that the reconciliation is in process. The government is doing a lot of efforts to put people together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, folks, Provi is going to be up here. If you want to come up here and just maybe instead of asking a question in front of the group, if you'd like to come up here and say hello, thank her for her testimony, for having the courage to do this and to share a very difficult time in her life. I really appreciate you being here. And one of the things that she said is to hear a witness is to be a witness. And that's what we promise all our survivors who have come here, that their testimony is now our testimony. So if you would like to come up and see Provi, I do have some copies of her book that she's willing to sign for you if you're interested. But if you just want to stop by and thank her for having taking the time to be with us today, then we'll go ahead and stop questions and do that. Thank you again, Provi.
Thank you. You're welcome. No, that's fine. Looks good.